Fanboy Friday with Mark Walters and Robert Miguel.
Coyote Country 104.9.
That's right, time again for Fanboy Friday. So with me on the phone from Big D, Dallas, Texas, professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, and show director at Dallas Comic Show, the one, the only, Mark Walters. Everybody. Mark, good morning, sir. Well, just a quick update. I saw Avengers Endgame. Fantastic film. Loved it. Pretty much everything about it. So everything you said was amazing. I even went to McDonald's, bought some Happy Meals for the first time in decades to get the Avengers collectible toys.
Good. That's great. Yeah, it seems like everybody that I've talked to, just about everybody I've talked to has loved it. I think I've talked to one person so far that seemed like they weren't thrilled with it. And it was kind of over like some nitpicky stuff. So, yeah, most of the people I talked to seem like they're really enjoying it. Now, where did you say you got the toys from?
McDonald's. They're in the Happy Meals.
Oh, okay. So I have a whole new reason to go to McDonald's now. All right, I'll have to check out the Happy Meal toys.
You know, you grow out of the food, but you really don't ever grow out of the toys. I'm going to be honest. Because, I mean, McDonald's usually gets the exclusive Star Wars toys, too. So, that was give me a reason to go back at least once every 10 years or so.
Exactly.
But again, let's talk about new films in theaters this week. I know that you have some information on, here's something kind of cool, Long Shot, which is Seth Rogen, who, you know what, he hasn't been doing a whole lot lately, or either that or I'm just haven't been on board with it. But Seth Rogen teaming up with Charlize Theron, who, that's just kind of an odd couple, an odd pairing. What's going on with Long Shot?
Well, I enjoyed this a lot. It's kind of a fun, I'm trying to think of what I would compare it to, because basically the fact that what you said about it being an odd pairing, I mean, that really is kind of the whole impetus of the film. It's, Charlize Theron is playing, she's like the secretary of, oh God, it's been a while since I've seen it. I can't remember if she's supposed to be the Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense, but she's working under the president. The president is actually played by, if you're a fan of Better Call Saul, Bob Odenkirk plays the president. And he's playing a president who was like a former TV star that was elected president. And so he's not it's not the most competent president. So he's about to step down, and basically she's in a position where she could then run for the presidency. And, that's a pretty exciting thing and whatnot. So everybody around her is trying to help her, facilitate that. And then she sees the character that Seth Rogen plays. Now, Seth Rogen's character is someone that she knew in her youth, and that, he's just kind of this, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of a loser, pothead, journalist that just lost his job. But they see each other, the first time they see each other in a long time. She kind of has a fond memory of him, so she decides to bring him on to be a speechwriter for her campaign. Mm-hmm. So she's going to campaign to become president. He's going to become her speechwriter. And in the process of doing this, they kind of form a bond with one another, get really close. But, there's also some things there about, whether or not she's going to be able to maintain her integrity while running for president. He starts to kind of realize certain things. He's writing these speeches for her, but, he's asking questions like, well, do you really want to do these things that you're saying that you're doing? Do you really want to save this stuff? Whatnot. So it kind of brings up, some of the moral, ambiguity that comes with, politics and whatnot. And, but at the same time, it manages to not really, kind of take sides or anything like that. It doesn't turn into like a political commentary necessarily. It's just more of, the political background of her running for president. And it's, kind of this fun sort of, outrageous comedy. If you're used to the kind of comedies we've seen from Seth Rogen over the last few years, there's definitely a lot of that in there. But surprisingly, there's a lot of heart to it, too. It's kind of I guess you'd call it a romantic comedy, but kind of a quirky romantic comedy in the sense. And so, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I thought Rogen was really good. I thought Charlize Theron was terrific. And I will say, there's something about Charlize Theron. She really has this chameleon-like ability. She can just play, pretty much any role. I mean, she just really sells it, and you believe it. You buy into her, kind of playing these roles and whatnot. So I thought she was terrific. So, yeah, I was really happy with it. It's a lot of fun.
You brought that up. That's kind of one of the things I was going to ask was with Charlize, she's kind of highbrow. She's actually a great actress who's even, transformed herself, in the past. And I was kind of wondering if, she would be able to take on that comedic role, with somebody like Seth Rogen. So she plays it off pretty good, huh?
Oh, yeah. She's terrific. She actually has a lot of really funny moments. That's the thing about Charlize Theron is she's one of those actresses that I think people, they don't really think of her as being funny. Like,
right.
they don't really look at her and think, oh, yeah, she could do comedy. She's really great at comedy, and this is a film that really proves that. So, yeah, I thought she was terrific in there.
And then one other thought / question I had was, the last time we saw Seth Rogen, now when I'm seeing the trailers on this, the first thing that came to mind was Knocked Up. Seth Rogen, beautiful woman who's totally out of his league. It's kind of along that same lines, but I don't recall Knocked Up being very good at all. So you're saying this is going to be a step above that, obviously, right?
Yeah, I think this is better. I think this is a little more, you could certainly argue the fact of, is it believable that a guy like this is going to end up with a woman like this?
Right.
But because of the way they play it in the movie and because of the fact that the character that she's playing, she's so disconnected from kind of just normalcy. The fact that she's a politician, the fact she spends all of her time, being immersed in politics and whatnot. And they do actually have kind of this running subplot of, people wanting her to end up with the Canadian Prime Minister, who's this really good-looking guy, but he's kind of a dork,
right?
And so it's like, so there's kind of that, running subplot of, this is the guy that everybody thinks that she should end up with, and Seth Rogen's character is the guy that, like, no one can believe she would even be interested in. So it is sort of that unexpected pairing. We see that a lot in romantic comedies, but it actually does work pretty well here, and the end result is really, really satisfying. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
All right, so again, that's Long Shot. That's in theaters today, rated R, 2 hours and 3 minutes, right now coming in at 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I know over at BigFanboy.com, your website, I know you guys are always heavily involved with some cool stuff on Free Comic Book Day, and that is coming up soon, right? When is that?
Free Comic Book Day is this Saturday.
It's tomorrow, wow.
It's going to be going on pretty much every single major comic book store that you can think of is going to be doing some kind of promotion for Free Comic Book Day. Now, what this is, if you've never been to a comic book store before, a lot of these shops, they'll have free comics. You can go in, you can pick up a free comic. There's no obligation to buy anything in most places. Some places have different rules, but most places you can just walk in and grab a free comic and go. Now, what I would suggest is if you're going to go to one of these stores and pick up some free comics, buy some comics too, because you got to think of that. These guys, most of these stores, these brick and mortar stores, these are mom and pop organizations. These are family-owned stores. These guys need the sales. And here's the thing, you got all these big comic book movies coming out. Endgame is totally, it's raking in money in the box office. It's already made well over $1 billion. It's probably going to hit $2 billion this weekend. And if it wasn't for comic books, you wouldn't have these movies. You wouldn't have these movies that you could go see and that you could celebrate and you could love and whatnot. So please, go to your local comic book store, buy a couple of comic books, try out a couple of books, pick up some free comics while you're there. That's the bonus, but buy a couple of comic books and support the comic book industry, because let me tell you something, the comic book industry really needs some help right now. The comic book industry is not as strong as it used to be, and, if you want to continue to see these comic book movies, you've got to support comics. So my recommendation, yes, absolutely, go pick up some free comics. But while you're there, buy a couple comics too. It's not going to cost you that much money. It's going to help out the shop. Everybody wins. We all win in the end.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, while we're on the subject, why don't you throw out a couple of suggestions of maybe some old comics, new comics, something that, just turn us on to something if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, DC Comics just released a book this week, actually, that I believe is called Rise of the Villains. Oh, God, am I getting that title wrong? I think that's the title of it. But it's an introductory comic, and get this, it's 25 cents. It's a quarter comic, and it introduces a new storyline that actually looks really, really interesting, in which the villains are all kind of plotting together to figure out a way to, kind of get the jump on the superheroes and whatnot. That just came out this week. If you're into zombies and stuff like that, but you're also kind of interested in superheroes, DC Comics also released a new series called Deceased. And the concept of this series is that basically what happens if a zombie outbreak happens in the DC universe? Like if characters like Batman and Nightwing and all these other characters start turning into zombies, how would they cope with this? How would they deal with it? And the first issue of that just hit this week as well. In terms of like Marvel Comics, I would say one of the better ones that's probably on stands right now that I would recommend. There's a brand new Thanos comic that just came out. If you're a fan of Thanos from the Endgame and Infinity War, this comic kind of deals with his origins with his daughter Gamora, so you can get a little bit more info about that. And then there's some great Spider-Man comics that are out there as well. There's a lot of really good stuff. Marvel has been doing something that I really like. They've been putting out these comics that they call True Believers comics. And what it is, they're reprints of classic comic book issues, like some of the favorite comic book issues through the years, but they just cost $1. And almost every comic shop that you go into carries these. So if you're wanting to get into comics, if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money and you don't want to risk it on something that you're not sure if it's good or not, just go in there and pick up a couple of those True Believers comics. It'll just cost you $1 a piece. You can read the stories, see if you like it. And if you do like those characters, there's recommendations in those books about other books you can get as well.
Well, right on, man. That's some good stuff there. We need to talk more about comics on this show. I just thought about that, so maybe we should think about that in the future. We got to talk about this because bad news. It was just reported yesterday, but apparently it happened a couple of days ago. We lost, a legend in the sci-fi, movie world industry. Peter Mayhew, the original Chewbacca, the one and only Chewbacca, passed away. Mark, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I know that you've worked with him over the years many times, right?
Yeah, I not only worked with Peter, I was actually really close with him and his wife, Angie. I kind of considered them to be, almost like extended family in a way. I was very lucky to be able to get to know them on a really personal level. We first met a couple decades ago. We first met actually waiting in an airport because we were all going to Star Wars Celebration. And, so I got to know them, and we became very, very fast friends. I would go to their house for New Year's Eve.
Wow.
I spent a lot of time with them outside of the convention circuit, which, looking back on it, I feel like I'm really, really fortunate that I had those opportunities. And, I was really very excited to get to know Peter, outside of just the Star Wars realm, because everybody always wants to talk to him about Star Wars, and that's understandable. I think he got that. He understood that was something that really meant a lot to a lot of people and whatnot. But to be able to just kind of sit with him and talk about, him growing up in the UK and what it was like being him, at a young age and having to try to fit in and, always kind of being a bit of an outcast because of his size and things like that.
Right.
And, there was a lot of times when he opened up to me about those things, and, it was very interesting hearing him talk about it. But, Peter loved meeting fans. He loved going to conventions. He was especially excited about meeting the children that would come to these shows. Whenever children would show up in costume and things like that, he always got kind of a giggle and a smile out of that. And he loved taking photos with kids. So, looking back on those memories that I have, seeing him at shows and watching him meet people and, just kind of sharing in the enthusiasm that we all have for the Star Wars franchise. Because, especially for someone like Peter, that meant so much to him because, this is a guy that, let's face it, I certainly don't mean this in a mean way, but this was a guy that was going to have a hard time kind of fitting in life. And here he found this character that he could play that was so beloved and so iconic and so, everybody loved Chewbacca. Everybody. It was just, so here's a guy that for years and years and years, a lot of people kind of, wouldn't even look in his direction. And he turned into one of the characters that everybody loves probably more than anybody in the sci-fi universe.
Yeah.
So when you look at that legacy, and then also the fact, I think a lot of people don't realize this, but when he met his wife, Angie, he decided to move to Texas so that he could be with her because she had family, she had kids, and he wanted to be with her here. So he became a Texan. And
Yeah.
I think it was in 2005 he officially became a Texan. And he lived in Granbury and eventually Boyd, Texas. And, he was just kind of living the life of a good old Texas boy. I can honestly say, I remember going to his house and we would sit there listening to, Willie Nelson and Hank Williams and stuff like that.
Wow.
He was embracing being a Texan, and I always thought that was so cool. especially considering the journey that this guy had taken, where he'd come from. So, yeah, he's going to be terribly missed. It's a really sad day, and the most recent thing that he did was he was actually he traveled to Chicago a couple of weeks ago for Star Wars Celebration. He was out there for, I believe, 5 days, which, is one of the largest conventions of its type in the United States. And, he made it through it and met all the fans and made time for everybody. And so, the thing I got to tell you, Robert, the thing that really kind of, I guess it's sort of bittersweet in a way. This weekend is also referred to as May the 4th.
Yes.
It's kind of a time of year where a lot of people celebrate Star Wars fandom and kind of, find ways to show their love for the franchise. And it's going to be really sad, going into May the 4th, knowing that we've lost, one of the most important characters in that franchise. But his legacy that he leaves behind is amazing. So, Godspeed, Peter, and I'm definitely going to miss you.
Well, man, I know it's tough talking about it as you were as close as you were to him, but man, of course, rest in peace. Peter Mayhew, I believe he was 74 years old, and he will absolutely be missed. And I'm telling you, but one of my very, very first, heroes. I remember just the first time I saw Han Solo and Chewbacca on screen and got it. And I was just like, oh man, who's that big old fuzzy sidekick? I mean, I was too young to say sidekick, but you know what I mean? Just that connection and those characters. And if you think about it this way, the pairing, of the human and either whether it's an animal or it's an alien, you know what I mean? That kind of human, other guy's sidekick, that they pretty much coined that, right?
Oh yeah, I think they very much made that something that now we see. It's kind of almost commonplace when you see a lot of these sidekicks. But yeah, that was the film that really sort of started that off.
Well, right on, man. And again, tomorrow is May the 4th. Be with you. We're going to celebrate Star Wars. Do you have any cool plans to celebrate besides Free Comic Book Day?
No, I'm actually going to be pretty busy on Free Comic Book Day. I'm going to 2 different stores. If anyone is in the Dallas area, I'll be at Zeus Comics from about 9 a.m. until about 2 p.m., and then I'll be at Red Pegasus Comics from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and then I'm probably just going to go home and pass out after that.
Right on, man. Well, anything else going on at BigFanboy.com you need to talk about?
No, I think that's it. We posted up a couple of trailers this week. If you guys haven't seen the god-awful looking trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie, you can watch that at BigFanboy.com. There's also a new trailer for Pokemon Detective Pikachu. We posted that up as well. And, we'll be keeping our finger on the pulse of anything else cool that's coming up, so we'll let you know.
All right, man. Well, once again, let's give it up from Dallas, Texas, professional Q&A moderator and speaker, film critic at BigFanboy.com, and the show director at Dallas Comic Show, the one and only Mark Walters. Thank you, sir. And may the 4th be with you.
Yes, Robert. May the 4th be with you as well.
Fanboy Friday with Mark Walters and Robert Miguel.
Coyote Country 104.9.